Hi, I'm Deanna, and welcome to another doll repaint video. So you saw the thumbnail for today's video, and you know that today I'm making an entomologist doll. But you might be asking yourself, Deanna, what's an entomologist and why the heck are you making a doll of one? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So entomologists are a type of scientists that study the lives of insects. This can range from a variety of things, but basically they study the lives of insects, their habitats, and even go out looking for new breeds of insects. So the idea for this doll came to me while I was doing some research for one of my drawings. A lot of my artwork is inspired by nature, and one day I was looking at a lot of pictures of moths and butterflies. So while I was looking at these photos, I started creating a story about a young entomologist. She's fresh out of school and eager to make a name for herself. On this particular day, she's going out into the field so she can look for some rare butterfly specimens so she can teach the world all about them. So it just seemed like a really fun idea to make this doll, and scientists are cool, and there should be more dolls made about them. All right, enough talking. Let's get started on our doll.
For today's doll, I'm using everyone's favorite pink vegetarian vampire, Draculaura.
She's the most common doll I have in my supply, and I haven't actually used her for one of my dolls yet. I picked her because there's something about her that matches what I envisioned for my entomologist girl. A certain bubbly excitement and zest for life. She has an adorable face mold with a pointed chin, and I don't know, I just think she is perfect for this repaint. The first thing we have to do with this sweet girl is dunk her head in boiling hot water. This loosens up the glue in her head and softens the plastic of her head enough that I can detach it without breaking the neck peg inside. Now I can come in with my forceps tool and remove her old hair plugs. This will give me a blank canvas to put in new hair. And speaking of blank canvases, I'm taking some pure acetone nail polish remover and removing her factory face paint. This will allow us to go from vampire to our bug-loving babe. Okay, so what I did here was gave her a couple layers of white acrylic paint to cover up her original pink skin tone. And then I came in with some soft pastels to give her some purple undertones. But I'll go over this a little bit more when I go over her body repaint. Now I'm using this soft bristled brush to smoothly apply soft pastels in her base skin tone color. You can see that she has a little dent on her face, and I kind of like that because real skin isn't perfect and it gives her a little bit of character. Okay, so I gave her about 3 layers of base skin tone, sealing between each coat with Mr. Super Clear Sealant. I also gave her a light spray of freckles using watered down acrylic paint. Now it's time to start contouring using different shades of browns. I'll be going over a lot of the areas that I put the purple undertones, and the goal is to have these spots blend out with the purple subtly showing through like it would on real skin. Now we're going to be doing the opposite of shading. We're going to be highlighting. While contouring makes areas of the face recede, highlighting brings things forward. Important areas to highlight on her are the cheekbones and forehead, and I'll continue to push these in other areas while continuing with the face up. So now that I've got a good start on her skin shading, I want to start blocking in her eyes. For some reason, I had to give her a couple extra layers of Mr. Super Clear before I could actually get my watercolor pencils to be able to work. Her skin felt too waxy almost, and they weren't marking on her face. But anyway, at this stage, I want to make sure that I'm getting her eye shape right and leaving room for details like her water lines and lid creases. And it's also when I figure out the placement of her pupils. This doll is looking around for butterflies, so I want her to look alert and like she's on a mission. Next, I'll be working with acrylic paints to push the details of her eyes. I've painted the whites of her eyes, and I'm coming in and highlighting her eyelids just above her tear ducts. Before I seal this layer, I want to give her a touch of blushing to areas like her cheeks and ears with my soft pastels. Alright, I've sealed the previous layer and I let that dry for about 30 to 40 minutes. Now I'm coming in and darkening and defining areas with my black watercolor pencil. This will act as a kind of guide for me when I come in and line those areas in paint. And jumping forward, I've come in with paint again and blocked in the basic eyebrow shape, and I'm continuing to add details with my watercolor pencils. I don't want her eyes to be a flat white color, so I'm using this purple for shadows, which will make them more three-dimensional. I'm also using a little bit of red here and there because, well, you know, eyes have blood vessels in them and all eyes have hints of red in the scleras. Now I'm adding some more prominent freckles to her face. She spends a lot of her time outside searching for specimens, so she has a lot of freckles to show for it. Jumping forward, you can see that I finally filled in her eyebrows, and now it's time to give her lips some much needed attention. Using a wet paintbrush, I'm picking up pigment from this berry colored pencil directly. I think this method gives me a smoother and better application than if I use soft pastels or dried pencils. Here is her finished face. After the lips dried, I came in and darkened some areas, and I gave her lines to add some texture to the lips. So her face is done, and now I want to paint her body. To start, I'm going to prep her skin by using a nail file and buffing it down. I'm going to be focusing in particular on these very prominent seams that are running along the sides of her body. Like her face, I've gone ahead and given her body 2 coats of white acrylic paint. So now I'm adding cool purple undertones to the areas of the body that get the most shading and are the areas that typically show blood vessels through the skin the most. Here I'm adding 2 different types of colored freckles, brown and red, for an added touch of realism. The freckles are very prominent, but that's okay. Now that the paint has dried and been sealed, I'm coming in with another layer of soft pastels in that base skin tone color. This will make the freckles look like they're just part of the skin and not just sitting on top of it. After that, I of course used my brown pastels to shade and contour the body, and now I'm using a lighter pink color to do her regular blushing. Now for our sun-kissed girl, I want to give her some bolder freckles to go on top of the subtler ones. Since our little entomologist is out in the field, she's going to need some tools to help her study insects. Today, she's going to be looking for butterflies, so she of course needs a butterfly net. To construct the net, I wanted to make the hoop out of a firm material, and I have a bunch of these circular wooden discs in my art supplies. I didn't have the right attachment to make a perfectly circular hole in the disc, but I made it work using my hand Dremel. Off camera, I made the net part using a mesh material, and I super glued it around the opening of the hoop. The next step is attaching the hoop to this painted dowel stick to make the handle. I decided to give the net a little grip for her, so I'm covering the bottom with Elmer's Glue All, and I'm wrapping it with this twine. And here's the completed butterfly net, which I think turned out so cute. Her next accessory is also super important for her to have out in the field, and that's her sun hat. I purchased this great jute fabric online to make her hat, and I've mapped out how large I want to make the brim of the hat on it. After figuring out how large to make the hole for the crown of the head, I'm cutting it out and snipping around what I'll call the seam allowance. This pill bottle is the perfect size for this project, and I'm pushing it through the cutout hole and making sure the snipped parts of the seam allowance are poking up. Then I'll cover it in glue and let it dry. The brim is mostly dry, and as you can see, I formed the crown of the hat in a similar way. I'm going to start sizing and cutting the crown part down until I find a good height for this piece. Now that I'm happy with the height of the crown, I'm going to push it up through the hole of the brim. You can see that the glue is still a little bit wet, and this makes this part easier because there's still some give to the fabric, and it's easier to push through and attach with hot glue. Now I want to make a little chin strap for the hat, so the hat doesn't get blown away while she's out and about adventuring. I'm using more of that twine that I used on her net, and using this large needle, I'm poking it through one side. And now the other. And now that it's through, I'm pulling the string down and tucking it behind the base of the crown. I added a ribbon around the hat, and now I'm adding a little bit of decoration with this flower bead. Now I want to tackle an important function of the hat. I've got this mesh fabric, and using a running stitch, I'm going to gather it and attach it to the back of the hat. Since she goes out and looks for insects, I think she would want something to help protect her from things like mosquitoes and other pesky bugs. So this will act like a protective net for her. For a finishing touch, I found these amazing butterfly nail charms, and I'm going to glue them on all over the net and her hat. Of course, while she's out looking for butterflies, she has no idea that she is in fact covered in them. I really liked making this hat, and I was thinking about making a longer and more in-depth video on hat making. If you want a full tutorial, comment and let me know. Now that we have some accessories for her, I think it's time to give her some hair. While going through my hair supply, I really liked this purple color. This is the color Whisper by the Doll Planet. Now, here's where things got a little topsy-turvy and messy for our doll makeover. I'm a little bit weird, if you haven't noticed, and I like to reroot after doing the face-up. I know most repainters don't, but being new to this, I find having her hair there very bulky and awkward when I'm trying to paint. I was planning on doing this process as usual, but something about her paint was, I don't know, thicker, and the paint started to chip, which is why most artists don't do it this way. So I can't reroot this time. So what can I do? Well, I can make hair wefts. And that's what I did using the purple hair that I planned to reroot with. This was probably strike number 2 for making this process much harder for myself, since that hair was so fine and harder for me to control, but I made it work. Strike 3 would probably be using hot glue to make the wefts, because the strip of glue was very thick and it made it really hard to glue to the head. I had to actually use super glue for this part, which made things very messy. Now we can see what she looks like after putting a few rows on. Yeah, not good. So here's where my brain panicked a little. After looking at it, I decided that it would be a good idea to go ahead and cover her hair with her hat, and that will make things all better because I won't be able to see all the crazy glue. And instead of just temporarily placing her hat on her head, I decided to impulsively hot glue it onto her actual head. Now, I don't know if you can relate to me when it comes to impulsively making decisions in pursuit of covering up imperfections, but it can be frustrating and definitely makes things much harder than they need to be. So after gluing the hat on, I stepped away, took some deep breaths, forgave my wonderful but impulsive brain, and went back to adding more wefts to make her hair look fuller. Alright, back to business. I styled her hair into pigtails and I left out some hair wispies in the front. Everything is kind of sticking out straight, so I'm going to use my mini hair straightener to tame and shape the wispies and her pigtails. And so what's next? The outfit. So please allow me to be super excited about this dress I made. If you've been watching my videos, you know sewing is fairly new to me, so I'm super excited to share this dress. Guys, this is huge for me. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and it almost feels like I've unlocked a new superpower. I wanted to give her a nice light sundress to wear while she's out and about, and I'm going to embellish this dress using one of these bee earrings that I had laying around, and I'm going to attach it to the bodice of the dress. Now we can put her dress on and we can put her head back on her body, which I'm sure she's been missing. For her shoes, I'm using this pair that I had in my supply. No idea who they came from, but I'm going to paint the purple part white. To finish the shoes, I'm using another pair of bee earrings. I wish I had a pair of sparkling bee shoes. One last accessory I want to give her is this magnifying glass. I think she would want to have easy access to this so she could look at specimens up close. Now I just have to attach her butterfly net and we'll be ready to see her final look. And here she is, our little entomologist girl. And you know, calling her my entomologist doll is a bit of a mouthful, so I want to know what you think I should name her. I'm really happy with the end result today, guys. All of her little accessories are so fun and I loved making them. And for me, the dress was such a big victory and I have to say, I'm really proud of it. And now I'd like to ask you for a huge favor. If you haven't already done so, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. This is one of the best ways for my channel to grow and it helps me achieve my dream of sharing my art around the world. I'm gonna go practice making hair wefts and I will see you next time with another doll makeover. Bye!
What do you call a bee's back? It's behind.